The European Commission's head of trade has just wrapped up his visit to China with a press conference here.
Ultimately, does this mean that the EU tariff hammer is going to fall on Chinese EV exports, and how severe could those tariffs be?
In an unexpected twist, the European Union has made a bold move that could reshape the global electric vehicle (EV) market, potentially devastating the United States auto industry. The EU has recently opened its doors to Chinese electric vehicles, a decision that could give China a strategic advantage in one of the most lucrative markets in the world. Could this move tilt the balance of power in favor of China? The EU's game-changing decision. The European Union has just made a decision that could send shockwaves through the automotive industry. After a recent visit by the European Commission's head of trade to China, it was confirmed that the EU is opening its market to Chinese electric vehicles in a way that could give China a major foothold in Europe's highly competitive automotive sector. This shift comes at a time when the US has been pushing forward with protectionist tariffs aimed at defending American jobs and industries. But by rolling out the red carpet for Chinese EVs, the EU is doing the opposite, embracing foreign competition in a bid to secure a cleaner, greener future for its citizens. Why is this decision so significant? For years, China has been aggressively investing in the electric vehicle sector, using government subsidies, advanced battery technologies, and a thriving manufacturing ecosystem to produce EVs that are not only affordable but also high in quality and innovation. While China has made strides in dominating its domestic market, the EU's embrace of these vehicles opens the door for Chinese automakers to expand into Europe, a crucial market for EVs, where strict emissions regulations and incentives are pushing for greater adoption of electric vehicles. But why now? The timing of the EU's decision is remarkable, as it comes when the US, under President Trump's administration, has implemented steep tariffs on foreign auto imports. These tariffs are designed to protect American manufacturers from overseas competition, but they also raise the cost of importing foreign vehicles, including those from China. Instead of allowing these tariffs to stifle global competition, the EU has chosen a different path, one that could dramatically alter the dynamics of the global automotive industry. Will this bold move by the EU allow China to dominate the global electric vehicle market, or could it backfire on both China and Europe? Let's dive into how this could affect the auto industry. China's rapid EV expansion and why it matters. Over the past decade, China has emerged as a powerhouse in the electric vehicle market. With government-backed subsidies, cutting-edge battery technology, and an expansive manufacturing base, Chinese automakers such as BYD, NIO, and Xpeng have scaled their production at an unprecedented rate. Their vehicles are not only affordable but also increasingly competitive in terms of quality and technology, making them viable options for consumers globally. The success of Chinese EVs has been bolstered by China's dominance in the global supply chain for crucial EV components, particularly lithium-ion batteries. These batteries are the backbone of any electric vehicle, and China has invested heavily in both the production and refinement of the raw materials required for these batteries, such as lithium, cobalt, and nickel. In fact, China's influence in the global battery supply chain has only grown in recent years, putting them in a position to dictate the pricing and availability of these critical resources. But it's not just about affordable prices. Chinese automakers have invested heavily in research and development, R&D, pushing forward innovations in battery efficiency, autonomous driving, and even vehicle-to-grid technology, which allows EVs to contribute power back to the grid. This kind of innovation gives Chinese vehicles a technological edge that many European and American automakers have struggled to match, particularly in terms of cost-effectiveness. The low production costs of Chinese EVs, along with their advancements in technology, have made them increasingly attractive to consumers in markets around the world. For the EU, opening up to Chinese electric vehicles is a way to meet their ambitious green goals and fulfill the growing demand for affordable, high-performance EVs. By allowing Chinese manufacturers to enter the market without excessive trade barriers, the EU hopes to accelerate the transition to electric mobility, offering European consumers a wider range of affordable electric options. However, this move is not without its risks. Could the influx of Chinese EVs into the European market cause disruption to European automakers, or will it help accelerate the continent's green transition? The EU's economic gamble with China. Europe's decision to open its doors to Chinese electric vehicles is a gamble. While Chinese automakers bring affordable EVs to the table, they also bring with them a host of potential economic and political challenges. One of the main issues at play is the competition between Chinese EVs and European automakers who have struggled to catch up to the rapid growth of the electric vehicle market. While automakers like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz have made strides in the EV market, they face higher production costs, complex supply chains, and regulatory hurdles. These challenges have made it difficult for European manufacturers to produce affordable EVs at the scale required to meet growing demand. By contrast, Chinese automakers benefit from lower production costs, allowing them to offer EVs at a significantly lower price point while maintaining quality and technology. This creates a challenging situation for European automakers. As China's presence grows in the European market, European companies will need to compete not just on quality, but on price as well. The influx of Chinese EVs could push European automakers to either lower their prices, which may cut into their profit margins, or innovate more aggressively, which would require significant investments in R&D. At the same time, the EU's decision to embrace Chinese EVs comes at a time when the US is facing an economic standoff with China, driven by President Trump's protectionist tariffs. The US has raised trade barriers on Chinese imports in an effort to protect American jobs and industries, including the auto sector. However, by turning to China for electric vehicles, the EU is signaling a willingness to engage with China and embrace its growing dominance in the EV sector. This move could not only shift the balance of power in the auto industry, but it could also have long-term geopolitical consequences. Is the EU's embrace of Chinese EVs a smart move for the future of transportation, or could it backfire by strengthening China's economic and geopolitical influence? The US auto industry and the price of protectionism. While the EU opens its doors to Chinese EVs, the US has opted for a more protectionist approach, imposing tariffs on foreign cars, including those from China. These tariffs were introduced with the intention of protecting American automakers from foreign competition, particularly in the EV market. However, the long-term impact of these tariffs may not be as beneficial as President Trump and his administration might hope. The tariffs have made it more expensive for American consumers to purchase foreign-made vehicles, and this includes electric vehicles from China. While the goal was to protect American jobs and industries, the reality is that these trade barriers have created higher production costs for American manufacturers, particularly in the auto sector. As a result, American automakers have found it increasingly difficult to compete on a global scale, especially as foreign manufacturers like China's BYD and NIO continue to innovate and drive down production costs. By focusing on protectionism, the US risks isolating itself from the global EV market. While it may shield domestic companies in the short term, these tariffs could ultimately make it more difficult for American automakers to compete globally. If US manufacturers cannot access key markets like Europe and China, they may be left with limited growth opportunities. This could stunt innovation in the US auto industry and reduce the ability to scale up production, which is essential to remain competitive in the global market. Will Trump's protectionist policies ultimately harm the US auto industry by isolating it from key markets, or will they help American companies regain their competitive edge? The US auto industry's struggle to compete globally. The challenges facing the US auto industry are multifaceted, and the EU's decision to open its doors to Chinese electric vehicles only exacerbates the situation. While American car manufacturers have made significant strides in electric vehicle development, they still face considerable barriers in competing with China and Europe on a global scale. The US auto industry, long revered as the leader in automotive innovation, now finds itself at a crossroads as the global landscape shifts toward electrification. One of the major challenges for US automakers is the high cost of production. While companies like Tesla have led the charge in EV technology and innovation, even they face high production costs and supply chain disruptions. These issues, compounded by the trade tariffs imposed by the Trump administration, make it harder for American automakers to remain competitive. The costs of raw materials, such as lithium and cobalt, which are essential for battery production, have skyrocketed. These costs are particularly difficult for US companies to absorb, given that Chinese automakers benefit from lower production costs and government subsidies that allow them to undercut American prices. In addition, the infrastructure necessary to support widespread EV adoption, such as charging stations and renewable energy networks, has been growing more rapidly in countries like China and Europe. As the EU continues to welcome Chinese EVs, this will likely accelerate the development of the necessary infrastructure to support these vehicles. The US, however, has been slow to develop its EV infrastructure, partly due to limited investment and the restrictions imposed by trade barriers. As a result, US automakers are at risk of being left behind not only in terms of vehicle production but also in the development of the supporting infrastructure that is critical to the success of the electric vehicle industry. The combination of high production costs, supply chain disruptions, and tariffs leaves the US auto industry at a disadvantage. While the EU moves forward with the integration of Chinese EVs, US automakers are struggling to maintain a competitive edge. This could ultimately harm American workers and businesses, as companies may be forced to scale back production, cut jobs, or even outsource manufacturing to remain competitive. Will the US auto industry be able to overcome these challenges, or will it remain isolated from key global markets as China and Europe solidify their dominance? China's growing influence in the global EV market. As the European Union continues to roll out the red carpet for Chinese electric vehicles, China's influence in the global EV market is becoming undeniable. The country has spent years building up its EV industry, from production capabilities to technological innovations. With the EU opening its doors to Chinese automakers, China is poised to become an even more dominant force in the EV market, not only in Europe but also around the world. One of China's greatest advantages in the EV market is its ability to scale up production rapidly and cost-effectively. Unlike many Western automakers, Chinese companies have benefited from a highly efficient supply chain, which allows them to produce vehicles at a fraction of the cost of their competitors. This has enabled Chinese companies to offer electric vehicles that are not only affordable but also of high quality. As a result, Chinese EVs are becoming increasingly competitive in the European market, especially as European automakers struggle with high production costs and regulatory hurdles.